I mean, with all of that, it's still described as a well choreographed political propaganda, uninspiring. It's not a true reflection of what the state is, and that you have lost touch with reality.
Well, those ordinary people in the gallery are not reality. Is that what is being said? The people who stood there, those are their stories. After the sonar, nobody has contradicted any of those stories. The driver is still driving from Wa to Tamale in 4.5 hours. And he's able to go twice in one day. He goes to Tamale, he loads back, gets home, and his tuanzafi is still warm for him to be able to eat. Before, he would have had to stay in Tamale, pay a hotel to sleep over in Tamale, and load the next day to go back. That's a reality you cannot say, I mean, that does not exist. And so if you say, I am, out of touch with reality, I mean, I wasn't telling the story. The people were telling the story. Apim Shulamite, she didn't get opportunity to go into secondary school. So she sat at home for 1 year. She worked in a chop bar until we built that school in Ekumfi Otuam. Today she's the assistant girls prefect in Ekumfi Otuam, continuing her secondary education. That is not reality. Then I don't know what else is reality. And I felt very sad that people describe ordinary Ghanaians whose votes you want as being a part of a concert party, something. It's an insult to the Ghanaian, unfortunately. And you might detest your political opponent as much as possible, but you don't insult the Ghanaian people. Okay. These are real people, and I want to express my commendation to them for coming and standing up and being able to be part of the testimony of the change that is happening in Ghana. Okay.
And one other thing that came out after the State of the Nation's address, and I remember I think BNFT captured a story where it was, I think, captioned as "you missed out on the economy, you didn't talk so much about the economy." Are you afraid to talk about the economy because of, inflation is high, our gross to GDP ratio is all over the place? Is that a reason why?
In my years as Vice President and President, I've virtually become an economist, and I probably would say that talking about the economy is not an area I'm afraid to venture at all. The economy still got very good play, but what you should notice is the economy has two aspects to it. It has the macro, which is all the GDP figures and all that, and it has a real sector, and the real sector talks about the actual interventions that are being made. And I spoke about them. I talked about coffee. I talked about diversifying the export base of our economy. And so I talked about shrimps and aquaculture. I talked about, palm oil, saying that we're going to set up a palm oil development company in order that we're able to expand palm oil production. I talked about coffee. I talked about so many other things. I talked about the hydrocarbon sector, E&I, the transition to the gas era. That is talking about the real sector. I went very little on the macro because the week before, the Minister of Finance had done a big press conference giving the end of year numbers for 2015. I would have just been parroting the Minister of Finance if I went to Parliament and said exactly the same things that he said. We had a target for inflation, a deficit to GDP target of 7.3%. The outturn is 7.1%. He put that out. And he said that inflation is slowing down and that we expect that end of year inflation should come to about 12 or 13%. And so the minister had already spoken about it, and I didn't think it was necessary to go and recite all over again the things that he had said. Okay. And so I dealt more with the real sector of the economy rather than just talking about the macroeconomic figures. But the economy is responding, and everybody can see that it is. The cedi is stabilized. If you look at the turmoil that is taking place in the world financial markets, and you look at the fact that two of our major exports have suffered price collapses, and that the economy is still being this resilient, then it shows that something is happening. And I believe that all economists, if they take a good look and they're truthful, will tell you that this economy is more resilient than it was. The Minister of Finance is going to go back to Parliament and talk to Parliament about the collapse in oil prices, because crude oil, revenue from crude oil and gas has become a major revenue input into our economy. And so with the low prices, while we're enjoying lower prices for fuel on the market, and we're enjoying that, we're also suffering revenue loss as a result of the low oil and gas prices on the world market. So.
Okay. All right. With the business environment, the business barometer was released, and the top 10 challenges that a lot of businesses in Ghana are confronted with. They talk about multiplicity of taxes. They talked about energy, high cost of energy, and the like. And quite recently, you have the Ghana Union of Traders Association, GUTA, embarking on a 3-day strike. I mean, these are people who live just on every single day what they earn, but they were willing to starve themselves to drum home a point because they were just unhappy about the taxes. One, the secretary to the association was spoken to, and he said, I haven't heard anything from government. We've done this for 3 days. Nobody has spoken to that. Would you listen to them? Because they're talking about I think 2% importation levy. That is, they're paying another 1%, I think, and they feel it's too much, plus the 17%. Would you listen to them?
The Minister of Trade was out of the country at the time, and if I remember, the Deputy Minister of Trade met with them and listened to them and gave them assurances that government will sit and look at some of the issues that they had raised. A lot of the things they've raised are not new. One is about the 3% special import levy. It was introduced in 2013. It's not a new tax. It's been there since 2013. It was supposed to be to expire in 2015, but at the time we were starting the IMF program, and so when the minister went to Parliament, upon the expiry of the special import levy, the parliamentary committee, suggested that since you were starting an IMF program and one of the things you needed to do was to raise revenue, then let's postpone the expiry of the special import levy from 2015 to 2017. And so GUTA knows that in 2017, that levy is expiring. And that levy has been there since 2013. So it's something that we've lived with since 2013. It's not like it's a new levy that has been introduced this year in 2016. You get my point? There's a 1% processing fee. It's been there always. It was paid to the destination inspection companies before. Now we've taken out the destination inspection companies because they've gone to a single window system. And so the 1% is still paying the cost of the processing under the single window. It's not a new levy, it's the same. The only other things they complain about are the common external tariff.
The Ecowas.
Now the common external tariff is an Ecowas-wide implementation. It's not only us implementing it. If you add Ghana, aside from Ghana, there are 12 other Ecowas countries that have started implementation. So 13 of us are implementing. And this is supposed to harmonize duties across the sub-region so that we can move the next step into a customs union. And you start by harmonizing your taxes. So we all went to Dakar and we agreed on the common external tariff. And we committed to start implementation this year. And so we've started implementing it. It's not only in Ghana, it's in Cote d'Ivoire, it's in Togo, it's in Benin, it's in Nigeria, and all the other countries. Now what happens is with the common external tariff, we have 5 bands. So you have 0%, you have 5%, you have 10%, you have 20%, and you have 35%. And they have classified the goods in those bands. For instance, if you take 0%, pharmaceuticals fall in 0%. Then if you take 5%, it's normally intermediate goods like raw materials and other things. They attract 5%. So if you look at the effect that has taken place in our customs administration, some goods have remained the same. We estimate that about 47% of goods have remained in the same tariff band. No, 43%. So 57% of goods have changed. Of the 57%, about half have gone down, and so those who are importers of those goods are enjoying a lower tariff band, and about half have gone up. You get what I mean?
Yeah, I get the point. But
so if after taking away our own customs and adopting the ECOWAS customs, there have been changes in the bands. And so some importers are happy because in the new common external tariff, their tariffs have gone into a lower band. And some importers are not happy because in the new tariff, their tariffs have gone into the higher band. And so that is what is happening. And so some importers go and say, oh, but these things, but all of us sat together and all of us sat together and said that let's agree on these common external tariffs. And we agreed that we should ease the tariffs for items that are being manufactured within West Africa. And that's why pharmaceuticals, for instance, we put 0 rating on raw materials for pharmaceuticals. And so pharmaceutical companies importing raw materials and packaging into Ghana do not pay any duties. And so we cannot eat our cake and have it, unfortunately. And this is something that binds all of us as ECOWAS. Ghana cannot say we will not implement it. It's a decision that all of us went and commonly took. The only other thing I think the complaint is the excise stamp. There is an excise stamp for excisable goods. And so it covers soft drinks, it covers alcohol, spirits, it covers tobacco and other things. And they're supposed to buy an excess stamp and fix it to it. This is to make sure that we check fake goods coming into our system, and then making sure that goods that are imported, that are coming to compete with our local goods, have actually paid their excise duty, because they're coming to compete with our water producers. We're producing all kinds brands of water here, and somebody decides to import water from outside. So we say pay an excise duty and put a stamp on it, so that when we see it in the market, we know that you paid your excise duty. That's the only other thing that
was it a problem of communication? Was it a problem of consultation?
I think there's a problem of communications. I think that I hear a lot of conferences were held, to explain, but you can never have enough communication. And so I think that it should be a continuous thing. The Ghana Revenue Authority, the Customs, Ghana Customs and Excise Prevention Division, I think all of them must continue this education so that people understand, what is going on.
Okay. Mr. President, I was listening to the Mr. Ejenim Boateng, Ghana Telecom University College, and he explained that they currently, what we are experiencing is a suppressed demand on Dumso, that we are not generating the 2,300 as we are supposed to say in our peak. We're just generating around 1,500 and the like. And so at some point, we will go back to Dumso.
I find it strange when, I don't know if he's an expert. Ghana Telecom University, obviously, I don't think.
Ghana Technology University College, sorry. Ghana Technology.
Okay, yes. All right. Okay, I don't know where he is getting his figures from, but I think he should leave it to the experts to talk about. It's not a question of suppressed demand. Last year, by this time, we were experiencing a demand for power of about 1,900 megawatts. Last year, by this time. This year, at this time, we estimate a demand of about 2,000 to 2,100 megawatts. That cannot be suppressed demand. The demand for power at this time this year is higher than the demand for power at the same time last year. How can you talk about suppressed demand?
He cited the example of industries have had to operate on half capacity.
Yes,
that's so in the domestic setting, we're enjoying it, but industries are suffering.
That's because there wasn't enough power, and it was expensive to use generators. Now that we have enough power, from when did the power stabilize? From January. It will take time for industries to resume their production, but I believe that industries, with the availability of power now, are beginning to produce at full capacity. And so I don't know what survey he would have done, but sometimes people just spew these things into the public, and on what basis is he saying that it's because of suppressed demand?
Give the example of Valco, where he says they're supposed to operate.
Valco has been yes. No, I thought that Valco has been down since the previous government. We have suffered suppressed demand from Valco. If he talks about Valco, yes, and it didn't happen today. It was inherited because we were running short of power. It was necessary to give power to business, industry, and residential. Valco alone consumes almost 300 megawatts of power. If we're to switch Valco on today, we'll have to take 300 megawatts out of the system to give to Valco. And so for quite a long time, Valco was shut. It was when Professor Mills came that Valco was reopened and asked to do one port line. And so to save jobs in Valco and also to maintain the downstream aluminium industry, because once Valco shuts down, they have to import the aluminium ingots from outside. And so Professor Mills took a decision that, look, it's not going to be profitable, but let's still allow Valco to run in order to save jobs and to produce for the downstream aluminium industry. And so we asked Valco to start with one port line. And so they've been running one pot line for several years now. Half of Valco's suppressed demand, it's existed, from the time Valco was shut down.
Okay, the quick one. How worried do you get when you read in the papers that VRA is owed $20 million, or this company owes VRA $40 million and is asking for, say, 50% off it? How worried? Because in the Ghanaian's mind, it is a warning of things to come. So how worried do you get when those
I know the particular company you're talking about is a mining company, and
it's just one.
They started to experience problems when the price of gold dropped, and so it meant that they were not earning as much as they could, and so their bills with VRA piled up, and then they made an offer and said, look, they'll pay half of the money and VRA should write off the rest. And VRA said, no, if you have half of the money, yes, you pay it, and then the rest will agree with you a schedule for repaying. And so VRA hasn't forgiven anybody debt, but naturally VRA itself has a lot of legacy debts. The debts of VRA and the power utilities has accumulated over the years. And that's why one of the solutions to the power crisis was not only putting in enough generation. One of the solutions was also to do something about VRA's legacy debts, or the power utilities legacy debt. And that's why we introduced the energy levy, to help them pay off those legacy debts, clean their balance sheets, so that they are better able to sustain the power that they are generating. The good news is that we can put in more generation. The fear was that if you put in too much generation and you had excess generation above demand, then you're going to be paying capacity charges, especially now that we have IPPs producing the power. You're going to pay capacity charges for power that you were not utilizing. I met the Ecowas Electricity Regulatory Commission just last week, and they announced that the regional electricity market is starting at the end of 2016. And so once it starts, they're harmonizing the pricing and everything. Anybody who has excess power that you're not using immediately, you can put on the regional electricity market. And so it gives Ghana the advantage to be able to put in as much generation as possible, so that it satisfies not only our local demand, but if we have any excess, we can put it on the regional electricity market and sell it and bring dollars into our country. But let me explain to you one thing. We have been used to cheap power because Akosombo is 1,020 megawatt plant, and its hydropower is the cheapest. It's about 6 cents, per kilowatt hour. I just want to make this quick point. It's about 6 cents per kilowatt hour. Today, as I speak, Akosombo is producing only 380 megawatts of 1,020.
Sure.
And so it means that the amount of cheap hydropower we had in our energy mix, we call it an energy mix, has reduced. And instead, we've brought in more thermal power. So there's more crude oil and more gas, which is more expensive than hydro. And so it means that the unit cost of producing power has gone higher because you have less hydro feeding in. I hope you understand.
Oh, sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So you cannot pay tariffs at the same rate as when you had another 600 megawatts of Akosombo in the system. And that is why there has had to be an increase in tariffs if we are to sustain the generation. And I think that Ghanaians prefer a system where they have access to the power, you understand, and pay a little more than not have the power at all. I think that that's a decision we made long ago. And I just ask that Ghanaians understand the circumstances in which we're going through. If the rains come and they are heavy and Akosombo gets filled, we'll have an extra 600 megawatts feeding into the system.
Okay.
And that should bring tariffs down, definitely.
All right. Mr. President, you have championed this, building of 200 community day SHS. Now, some critics say that the community day SHS will not benefit the communities in which they find themselves because of the system that we're running. So, of what benefits then, of what importance is it to the communities that they are cited?
I don't understand how they will not benefit the community. This example
because
I gave you.
Because we're using the computer system. You don't decide where you would go to school.
The community day schools are supposed to absorb, children in the community who do not get placement in secondary schools of their choice. And so, like I said, Apim in Ekumfi did not get a secondary school to go to. And so the headmaster of the Ekumfi Community Senior High School, who is the former NAGRAT president, has enrolled children from within the communities to come into the school. And the last time I knew, there were about 300 and something students who would not have continued to secondary school. They finished JHS, they passed.
So that is outside of the computer system.
That is outside of the
placement.
computer's placement. The community day schools have not been put on the computer placement. Actually, there's a review of the computer placement system ongoing. And so once that review is done, I'm sure that they would decide whether it is useful to put it on. But I think that there can be a local catchment because they are day schools. And so you cannot post a child from, say, Chichire to Ekonfi Community Day School. I mean, where are they going to? Where are they really going to stay? And so it necessarily must capture the children who have not had the opportunity in the regular schools, and so who are staying at home because there's no secondary school in their community.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
and
you.
they've started admitting already.
Okay.